Okay guys, so you had 2 minutes reading time. This is what you should pick up and how you should start to make notes now when you're getting this kind of information. So, all sales are done on credit. So I make a note here. If they're going to be selling on credit, I expect that there should be credit limits, credit terms, credit worthy check. For all customers, to make sure that they can sell to them on credit. And the company uses a computer information system. So I just make a note, a computer information system. We don't know too much about that just yet. That's coming up in a later test. Sales representatives receive telephonic orders from potential customers. So now, orders on telephonic, so there's going to be no external sales order. And now guys, I already have a document that's not there, and so if I were trying to put down the process, I'm missing a document that I know normally should be there, the external sales order. So I start to put down here, tail order. I start to put down their process along the question as I see it, so I can compare it to mine when I get to the question. These orders are recorded on blank order forms. So now I've got a problem because this is going to be the internal sales order and it's blank. It's not pre-numbered and it's also not pre-printed with the details of an internal sales order. So I'm going to put down here, there's now an order, but it's not what I expect there to be. Credit payment terms are negotiated by sales representatives who then access the customer master file in order to add the customer and the customer's credit limits, credit terms. Okay, so I've got some problems here because the payment terms and obviously the limits are negotiated by the sales representative, and then that person goes and adds that to the master file. So biggest issue, or first issue I can note, there's a lack of segregation of duties because he is the one to determine the credit terms and then update the master file. One person doing two things. My next issue is that the credit terms are not authorized. Okay, he goes and determines the terms and then updates the master file for those terms. There's no way or process he follows to determine those terms. So I can see here from this, there is no credit-worthy check. Up top here I said there should be, but now I'm showing that there isn't. There's a problem. Okay. And they determine terms and credit limits, but those are not authorized. Finally, my next concern, not only the fact of the lack of segregation of duties because this person determines the terms and updates the master file, it's my access controls to the master file. Remember, master files carry very important information, so that not having the controls around who gains access to that means anybody can go and create customers and then make sales to those people. Alright, so now we get to our required. Discuss the control weaknesses. So guys, when you see the word weakness, you've got to think two things. One is that the control isn't working. So there is a control, but it's not working. And if a control is not working, it's not addressing the risk that it was put in place to address. The second thing is that the control is not there. So there should be a control, but it's not there. How do I know which controls should be and therefore it's not there? How do I know that it's not there? Because I need to compare this cycle, to the cycle that we want them to have. Which would therefore include all of those controls that we believe need to be there. So you're looking for the control weaknesses in the revenue and receipt cycle. So you've got to now think, what is the revenue and receipt cycle? Now guys, you can see, it's not the whole cycle that's been tested here. They literally are talking about receiving an order and then updating the master file. So when I want to go and then do the comparison, I'm not going to put the whole revenue cycle down because I'm wasting time. All I want you to do at this point is to say, okay, the revenue cycle that should be there is there would normally be an external sales order. From that, there should be the credit worthy check where they set the credit application form, where there is a credit application form, and they use that to set credit limits and credit terms. And then from that, there should be the internal sales order. What do I know? What do I want there to be in terms of controls? I want this internal sales order to be pre-numbered. I want the internal sales order to be authorized, as well as the credit application form authorized, which therefore means your credit terms and credit limits have been checked through the credit worthy check. And I want there to be segregation of duties between these functions. That's why I've got my arrows there, and I want to make sure that this internal sales order is reconciled to the external sales order to make sure that what is being placed on the order is actually correct. Okay, so I've now got my cycle. I can compare it to theirs to start picking up the problems. So in theirs, there's no external sales order, but guys, you need that external sales order for the reconciliation. The fact that they've got the telephonic order, we can now pick up one concern. So I can make a note here, one concern, no external sales order for recon to the internal sales order, so that internal sales order could be wrong. My first problem. My second problem, looking at the order, I can now go and say, it's not pre-numbered or pre-printed. My document controls are missing. And guys, I got that from over here. Okay, I didn't expect you to just look at this, tell order and O and know that it's not. It's because now I'm starting to pick the controls from the information that I've noted. Okay? Then I know that the credit terms are not authorized, but obviously neither is the order because nobody talks about it being authorized. So if it's not there, it's a weakness. So I can now go and say, here where I know that this should be authorized, it's not. So my third concern is my orders are not authorized. That's everything with an order. Now I've got to say, well, what else is missing? Guys, there's an entire document missing. Credit application form is missing. There is no form for this customer. So I now put down my fourth concern. There's no credit application form, and ultimately there's no credit worthy check. Yes, credit limits and credit terms are determined, but there's no documentation to justify this. And then on top of that, I've put it over here, not authorized. I can now make that fifth point here, the credit terms and credit limit is not authorized. And then my problems that I don't necessarily see in terms of documents, but I've got my lack of segregation of duties and my lack of access controls to the master file. Okay. We've already discussed there's no external sales order for recon. And from this, guys, I've got enough points based on what is expected. So let's go and have a look at the solution quickly, just so you can see how it's been laid out. Discuss the weaknesses. So they've gone and split it into the process, the order, credit management, and the master file controls. You don't have to, guys. That's just a nice way to make sure you address each concern. But as long as you're putting down the concerns and enough of them, you're going to get your mark. So orders are not pre-numbered, they're not authorized, and orders are not considered in terms of stock availability. So they don't go and check that they've got what they need for that order. There's no mention of the type of sale, so this one is questionable in this specific scenario. But when you go and see what they do and sell in another scenario, that would become relevant. Credit management, there's no credit-worthy checks, trade references, bank references, and the limits are not authorized. And the terms are not authorized. And your master file controls, there's no credit application form, it's not authorized, and then access to the master file is not restricted. And then because they don't even have the document, they don't do the reconciliation of the master file amendment to the hard copy documents. They also don't mention anything about the external sale and the recon of that, but I've discussed that so you know that is a valid control. Okay, so guys, what I wanted you to take from doing this question is the process that you need to follow. You read each line by line, you pick up the issues or the positives. We didn't really have many positives, that's why they weren't discussed, but we make the notes as we see the information, and then only when we get the required and we see what it's asking can we start to then bring in my ideal cycle for the client to then do the comparison. So don't go off on a tangent as soon as you start to see some negatives, and put down the cycle that you know there should be so you can start doing the comparison. Because guys, this question could state, discuss the positives in the cycle, and now you've gone off on a tangent and you don't know where to go. So you read and you pick up as you read. You make the notes of this cycle as you read it, and only when you get the question and you can see, okay, it is asking me for revenue, I put down my ideal, just addressing what this question is addressing, and I can do a comparison to pick up missing and weak controls. Super.